Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 Chicago Marathon race preview and pre-race tips presented by QT2 Run coach Jon Falk. Thanks for joining us today, Jon.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share some of my hard-earned wisdom with everyone.
All right, before you get started, I'm just going to let people know who you are a little bit. And so Jon has been running for a lifetime. He grew up just off the Boston Marathon course, and in the last 20 years, Jon has run more than 50 marathons and ultra marathons. He's run 19 of those marathons under 3 hours and has qualified for Boston more than 36 times over the years. He's raced this particular marathon in Chicago 4 times from 2006 to 2022, and he will be towing the line again this year for his 5th time. This time as invited athlete as part of the Wanda Age Group World Championships. So very exciting for that. And so as a coach, Jon's been coaching since 2008, and he joined QT2 Run in 2021. So Jon, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Welcome everyone who's joining us tonight, and the people who might be watching this leading up to race day. Hope you find this information useful. As Reem said, this will be my 5th time. It's been, over the years, one of my, the course has been one of the fastest I've run. I think of the 4 times I've run it so far, the 3 of them are my top 10 fastest marathons. It's a race that, if the weather holds, it can be a very fast course. It does involve a lot of deep thinking or strategy as far as race execution. It's pretty darn flat, and so it just allows you to just hit that pace, lock it in, and go. And if you excel at that, it will be a good course for you. Let's get going. Next slide. So kind of as an overview to what I'll be talking about today, kind of hit on the QT2 Systems 5 Cornerstones, and kind of have that ingrained throughout the discussion today, so that you can understand how what we do at QT2 can help you perhaps down the road for other races that you might have on your agenda. Going to hit the final weeks, what we're in the middle of right now, and kind of continue through there. Hit the day before, race morning, general course preview, and talk about race day pacing and fueling. And as Reem said, if you have any questions throughout presentation, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them afterwards, or you can contact me and in the comments on YouTube or an email address at the end of the presentation I'd be happy to get back to you about any questions that might have come up or any questions you might have about getting ready for Chicago. So the 5 cornerstones of QT2 are training, restoration, and race day-to-day nutrition, fueling, pacing, and mental fitness. And all those aspects kind of tied together and to help you execute best on race day. You have to be in preparation. It's kind of infused with how we go about preparing our athletes for race day. And we feel like it is tried and true and something that could benefit you as well down the road. Next slide, please. So right now we're in the middle of our taper. Hopefully you are starting to taper by now. You might have a few specific workouts you're trying to replicate the turnover you want to have on race day, kind of reacquaint yourself with the speed you might be doing. So you might have some just pickups to race pace just so you can remember what that's going to feel like. You want to try and simulate race conditions as best you can. Weather is still unpredictable at this point as far as the forecast, but it looks like we might have some decent weather, maybe on the upper end of what is best for marathon racing. Chicago can have very volatile racing. I'd like to think that because I'm going to be there, the weather will be good, because every year I've raced, I've had good weather, knock on wood. But the 1 year after in 2007, the year after my first race, was the year that they stopped Chicago. People over 4 hours in the middle of the race because it was unbearably hot and people were having a lot of heat-related issues. So it can be, you really don't know what you're going to get on race day. But talking about the generalities generally is conducive for a good race. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that continues. So if you live in the area or live relatively close by, it's good to try and train on the course. But if you don't, It's not a course that I feel like necessitates that you have experience on it. If you have ability to run on, if you have experience running on kind of extended flat courses, just remembering to run the tangents during the race. When you're dealing with a city course, you have the 90-degree angles you might be turning. Just making a good line as you go through the course, you're going to do well on this course. And then certainly you want to deal with, making sure that you have tested out what you're going to use on race day. So you may be saving that pair of carbon-plated racers for race day, and that's fine. I totally get it. I want a fresh pair too on race day, but you want to get at least a few miles so you can understand how that shoe is going to work on your foot. Because even if it's a shoe that you used before, if you're, when you get a new shoe out of the box, it's not going to feel exactly like that racing shoe that maybe you got a marathon or two in. So you just want to kind of reacquaint yourself with how that shoe is going to feel, and how if you're going to be using some new, like snazzy new running kit for your race, just make sure you know how that's going to feel, once it gets a little bit sweaty, so that you can, account for things that might come up, areas that you might be rubbing that you might not expect it to be rubbing. So it's good to have kind of see how things are going to work out. Doesn't mean you have to go out and do it for your long run, but at least get some experience in what you're going to be using on race day, as far as equipment. Next slide, please. So, what are your targets? There are different ways to go about kind of compiling that. Heart rate, RPE, rate of perceived exertion, pace, and power. Like for me, personally, I like to use RPE because I feel that is the most accurate about how you're feeling at that moment on race day. Because there have been times when I've been running a race and my heart rate is in the 150s and it feels like I'm working really, really hard. And there have been times my heart rate's been in the high 170s and I feel like I could go for hours. And so it can really impact kind of some of those other measurables can be impacted by how you're feeling on race day. So personally, I like to go by RPE, but I think they're all good information to take in, to be aware of, hopefully information that you've been kind of compiling throughout your training. So kind of what your heart rate is at your race pace typically, when you're feeling good. What your heart rate is at when you're not feeling so good. How much power it takes to hit that race pace, and just obviously using your splits. Like if your splits are not on race day, if they're feeling hard, it might be because of conditions, or maybe you didn't get a good night's sleep, but you have to readjust what you're doing to a more manageable output so that you can really maximize what you're able to put out there on race day. You want to focus on frequency and feel. Don't overtrain or panic train. If you're like me and you've been dealing with some injuries, or maybe you've had a sickness recently, don't try and fit in extra workouts now. Everything's kind of baked in at this point. The expression that often is thrown out there is the hay is in the barn, and that is very true. The best thing you can do is err on the side of recovery. Focus on getting good sleep. Focus on getting rest, instead of trying to feel like you're just getting everything right, that on race day you're just raring to go. If it's a question of erring on the side of taking it a little bit easy and being rested at the start, you want to err on that side. Next slide. So in the weeks leading up to it, there's lots of things you want to focus on. Obviously, you want to focus on keeping yourself fully hydrated throughout. That is something that you want to go into race weekend and on race day, kind of maximizing hydration going to that day. Making sure you're eating a balanced diet, as best you can. Just try and make sure that if you're eating healthy, what you put into your body is what you'll get out of it on race day. So try and focus on, cleaning up your diet a little bit in the weeks leading up to it. Small sacrifice for a big benefit on race day. After your workouts, you want to make sure, especially harder, longer workouts, which you probably don't have too many left at this point. But in general, when you have those workouts in your marathon training, you want to make sure that you replenish, have a solid, healthy meal to replenish yourself after those workouts, so you can really maximize the benefit you get from those harder efforts. And as always, making sleep a priority. I know if you're like me and you have a job or several jobs and you have a family and kids and events to get them to, and trying to get them to bed before you get yourself to bed, sometimes your own needs can go by the wayside. But try and focus, especially next week and a half as we approach race day on getting like a solid 7.5 to 8 hours sleep minimum. Going to race day well rested will benefit you measurably, especially the night before when if you don't get good sleep. If you had good sleep leading up to it, you're going to do well. You'll still be able to overcome, maybe poor sleep the night before I do the nerves. And then focus on kind of that healthy diet, taking in things like omega-3, to focus on getting that into your diet to help with anti-inflammatory properties of these type of nutrients. There's something that things you can do to kind of fine tune your body for race day. And to the extent you're able to tamper down the caffeine a little bit. I know it's hard, but maybe forgo that second cup or third cup on a given day, so just that your body can kind of get used to having that out of your system. And part of that is to do it if you're planning on using like caffeinated gels on race day, you're going to benefit the most from them if your body has kind of gotten that out of the system beforehand. Next slide, please. So especially as we're approaching race week, which is only days away, just focus on eating a normal diet. Like I said, just having variety in your diet will be good. Don't worry about starting to carbohydrate load at this point. That's something as you kind of go closer to race day that'd be more of a concern. If it's going to end up being a hot day, just adding a little bit more salt to your diet. If you tend to keep it bland, just so you can have that in your system, and also to kind of make up for using for workouts. Again, focus on keeping that caffeine down, making sleep a priority, and to the extent you're able to, like staying off your feet. The taper is all about allowing your body to kind of recover and from the training you put it through over the past 4 to 6 months, and allow you to kind of put yourself on race morning in the best position possible to execute and to run the race that you've been training for on race day. Next slide. So you want to practice your fueling really in every training session. So if you're planning on having a gel after 30 minutes or after 45 minutes or whatever you've decided for your race plan, you want to practice that in your training, especially on your longer runs. But you can still do that in your day-to-day training, just so you are accustomed, both from a logistics standpoint of getting a gel ready, getting it into your mouth, but also your body is anticipating that after that amount of working hard for a given period of time, your body is anticipating getting that, and so preparing your body for kind of how it's going to be, how you're going to fuel it on race day. You want your body to be used to kind of the timing of that. Definitely, the idea is to train your gut, as it says there. That's kind of the underlying idea, that your gut is prepared for how you're going to be, what your nutrition plan is, your fueling plan is on race day. After these workouts, you want to consider using some kind of recovery drink, both from a hydration standpoint, but also hopefully something with a little bit of protein in it that allows your muscles to rebuild themselves after you kind of broken them down after a given workout. Again, training with what you're going to be using on the race course. I'll get into that in a little bit, but if you're planning on bringing your own gels or planning on using what they're going to have on course, if you're going to do that, you want to make sure you trained with them as opposed to experimenting on race day. Pretty obvious thing, but sometimes it's one of those details that people miss leading up to race day. On race day, the fueling is kind of one of the things you have the most control over. You don't have control over the weather, but fueling and hydration are things you can control. And so that's what you want to focus on race day is, you want to develop a plan leading up to it and then execute it on race day. Next slide, please. So as alluded to before, most of us are not professional runners, and we have lots of things going on in our lives that we have to navigate, even leading up to race week. My big job as a parent does not suddenly go away in the weeks leading up to it. So there's some stresses that are unavoidable, but to the extent you're able to kind of reduce those external pressures, maybe just like clear your social calendar a little bit, just so you can kick back and take it easy and just like kind of prepare yourself mentally and physically for race day. I really feel that pays off when you're able to kind of quiet your mind and prepare your body to do that. Focus on what you can control. going in with a positive attitude, knowing that, hey, you put in the time, that you can execute on race day, that your training has prepared you to hit a certain pace, to go for a certain race time, that your fueling is dialed in for race day. Trust that preparation. And it's time we start to begin kind of visualization of, kind of what to expect. If you run the race before, you have a sense of kind of how the course will flow. If you haven't, definitely check out those kind of accelerated viewings of the course. They have that at the expo as well. But if you want to just see it, just so you can get a sense of the flow of the course, and that you can kind of incorporate that into your visualization of like, okay, this is how I'm going to feel at this point in the course. And you can really, actualize that on race day. Put out in writing, what your goals and targets are, kind of buy into that, make sure that you are, that you set realistic goals, but like, put them out there, be accountable for them, and go get them. And make sure those targets are based on kind of realistic expectations based on your training, based on kind of your general fitness at this point leading up to race day. Those are the kind of things that you want to think about. And then again, kind of with those specific workouts, the last couple of workouts you might have leading up to it, like kind of get a sense for what race pace is going to feel like, given what you're shooting for. And so that on race day, it's going to feel easy, or at least it's going to feel like something you can handle. Next slide. So it's a good idea to kind of go through the information on the website for the Chicago Marathon, kind of for those details. I'm going to be covering some of that during this presentation, but just, you want to kind of go through that so you know everything. There won't be any surprises on race day or leading up to it, that you know that you're going to have the documentation you need for picking up your race packet, or that you know what the metro stop is for if you're going to take the metro to pick up your packet, or what metro stop you're going to be taking on race day. You don't leave anything to chance. So you want to make your list, kind of what you need to do before you leave, what you need to do when you get there. Make sure you're ticking those boxes off in the week and change leading up to race day. Any last minute things, if you need to replenish your gels, don't assume that they're going to have them at the expo, or don't assume they're going to have a product at the expo that you might need. Get them now, and because you don't know, you may have to go about to a couple different stores to find what you're looking for, depending on what they have in stock. Make sure that you have your chargers. Make sure you have any batteries you might need for any electronics you're going to want to have leading up to race day and on race day. I can't tell you how many times people say like kind of freak out over trying to get a charger because they left it at home or they misplaced it. Don't anticipate being able to find that kind of stuff when you get there. Make sure you have everything squared away before you leave. Get your bag packed, not the night before, but in the days leading up to it, just so there's not any last minute stress. Confirm your reservations, your flight, confirm your hotel. Again, reduce that chance for surprises when you get to Chicago. Next slide. So in Quarry Place is where the expo takes place. There's actually a station that's, I believe, 3 city blocks from there. That's my recommended way to go get your packet. What I typically have done is gone straight from the airport to there. There's a place where you can check your bags before you go into the expo, and I just look at it as get that out of the way as soon as possible. If there's a specific speaker that you want to hear, or you want to come back to meet friends, obviously come whenever is convenient or makes sense to you. But it's just something that I think is best to get out of the way, kind of get away from that hustle and bustle, that kind of natural adrenaline spike you're going to get from being there and knowing that it's coming, just allowing your body to calm down afterwards. But you have good hours as far as you can get there throughout the day. Also, it's probably, of the expos I've gone to recently, it's given how things are post-COVID, but one of the better ones out there. So there's still, places you can try on new shoes, or you can try different products you might want to pick up, but don't try anything new. Don't try any of the samples or plan on using anything that you pick up there if you haven't tried it before on race day or even leading up to race day. Next slide. So just, it seems like a common sense thing to do, but make sure you check your packet when you get it. to make sure it has all these items, because you never know. You don't want to find out, late in the evening on that Saturday night before race day that you don't have safety pins in there. Those are the kind of things that you can deal with easily at the expo. So don't kind of make sure you avoid those kind of last minute gaffes that could have been fixed if you just made sure you had everything you're supposed to get. Even something as silly as, like, one year I got a women's small as a shirt, and if that just making sure that you get the right shirt is important, because while all the volunteers are well-meaning, they're not imperfect, and so you just want to make sure that you get what you're asking for. Next slide. So again, I think it's good to get there early, and better to get out of the way. But ultimately, kind of what makes the most sense to you is what you should do. It is a great opportunity, as I mentioned, to try new things. But again, I wouldn't take anything that involves like eating something or drinking something. You don't know if you're going to have, God forbid, a bad reaction to something, or if you're going to take something, it's just not going to go, just not agree with your stomach. So these are unnecessary risks. You can definitely kind of take up that swag that you get there and try it out after the race, but I wouldn't do it beforehand. Make sure that you have the ticket email and a photo ID when you get your packet. Next slide. So QT2 kind of takes a little bit different approach as far as kind of the traditional carbo load. And I think it really makes a lot of sense if you were to kind of work your way through it. And basically, we focus more on having a large breakfast before 9 a.m. the day before the race. And the reason is it gives you more time for your body to digest and process what you're putting into it. And I think that and keeping the meals relatively small going forward from that point give you the best chance of having a successful porta potty experience on race day. And as we all know, that is one of the biggest harbingers of a good race is a successful trip there. So it just allows everything to be processed and gives you kind of more confidence going into the race that those kind of things that can derail you or kind of throw you off aren't going to happen. Focus on hydrating, especially in the days leading up to the race. You want to keep yourself kind of at maximal hydration. Always have something with you to sip on. You don't overdo it, but just kind of keep that constant flow going. And again, as hard as it may be, trying to minimize the caffeine as much as you can, both as getting up to race day, you want to still kind of focus on getting good sleep, but also to benefit most from the impact of using any caffeinated products as part of your race day fueling or hydration, that you're going to get the most maximum benefit from the caffeine at that point. Next slide, please. So, it really, as far as shakeout run, I think it's a good idea to kind of stretch your legs out a little bit. I personally like to not do anything the day before and have my last run be 2 days out, just because I just want to stay off my feet as much as possible the Saturday before race day. But whatever will kind of help you, or whatever has been your your norm for pre-race prep. If you like doing a short shakeout race, the day before, do it. Keep it short. Maybe kind of just keep it easy and short and relaxed. It's a good way to kind of connect with people, that if you have friends there for the race weekend, great way to kind of connect with them. Whatever you normally do before race, stick with it. I wouldn't try something new. If you typically don't do a shakeout run, it's not now's the time. If this is your go race, now's not the time to try something different. Stick with what you know. It's kind of the overarching theme of really any pre-race prep. Next slide, please. So I'm a stickler for logistics. I like knowing, even if I have my phone with me, I like knowing the route I need to do to get to the metro station if I'm taking the metro to the start area. I've had the experience of like getting turned around at night and not being, in the wee hours of the morning, not sure, is this where I'm supposed to go? Like, have that all down, have a map on your phone, just prepare yourself so you don't have those, reduce the stresses you might be feeling on race morning. Go to bed early if you can. You may not sleep well. I set my PR many, many years ago after getting all of maybe 2.5 hours sleep the night before the race. But because I had good sleep leading up to it, you will still, it will not set you back significantly if you've had good rest leading up to it, which is why I've kind of emphasized that point as I've been talking. Make sure all your electronics are charged. I mean, we've all had it happen, or at least I've had it happen, where I check my watch and I was positive I charged and it's completely tapped out. I even have a backup watch just for that very case. You don't have to be as neurotic as me about these things, but make sure all your things are charged. Don't say, oh yeah, I charged my watch before I left to come to Chicago, and it's that fancy new Garmin watch that has will last for 72 hours of battery life or whatever. Don't trust that. I like to charge it, have everything charged, verified the night before. Just lead to, again, fewer surprises, fewer things that kind of upset your equilibrium on race morning. Next slide. So get everything set. I am if you're like me and you're very particular about having your bib on, even on your shirt, it takes me multiple attempts to get it right. You don't want to be doing that at 4 a.m, race morning. Get your bib on your shirt beforehand. Make sure everything's out. Make sure you have everything laid out. I even say do it 2 days out. Just you have everything out. You know where it is. You're not fishing through your bag for that pair of socks or your gloves or what have you on race morning. If you have everything ready to go, it's just going to be keeping yourself calm and relaxed. It's just that much easier. So you don't have those last minute stresses. Make sure that you have all the stuff that you you picked out, that you trained in to know that it works. It's all ready to go. Make sure you have your gear check bag set. If you're going to want to, for instance, change out of your race kit after the race, there is a changing area. So if you want to have clothes to change into, or the pair of UFOs to put on your feet afterwards, make sure you have that all set to go. Make sure anything you want to bring to the start that you want to have with you at the start is all ready to go, in terms of if you want to have layers to discard. Like most races, they collect those layers and will donate them to charity if they're worth saving. So if you want to have those layers, make sure everything's ready to go. Again, just focus on getting as much rest. Unfortunately, for most people, including myself, pre-race jitters are not conducive to good sleep. But if you've had good rest leading up to it, it won't set you back significantly. Next slide. So on race morning, kind of along the lines that I was talking about before, because you've kind of got everything you need to the previous day, early in the day, so it's worked its way through you. Focus on having some simple carbohydrates, fluids, electrolytes, a little bit of protein, no fat. Don't take any vitamins at this point. You want to be done eating ideally 3 hours before a race. You want everything to kind of have worked this way, or that you're going to, anything that you're hoping to benefit from on race morning, you really need to get into yourself as early as possible. So as soon as you get up, maybe you have that cup of coffee, you need to get going. Get something down your stomach, into your gullet, and just start getting ready to go. If you want to have something to nibble on nervously when you're on your way there or at the start, that's okay. But again, just you want to keep it to a minimum or not at all. Continue to sip on the sports drink until the start. I like to have something with me. Something to keep in mind that is that they don't let you take, and I'll kind of get into this in a moment about as far as what you can bring in, but they don't let you take open bottles of water or sports drink in there. So if you want to bring something in with you, make sure that you haven't opened it yet. You will be able to get stuff in there, but just again, if there's something that you are that you need, that you are want to have something that you're used to, then keep that unopened, and then get that have a gel to get into your system. Hopefully you've been training this way too, but you want to get a gel into your system 15 or 20 minutes before the start. Get that last kind of glycogen boost right before you get going. You really want to maximize what you have in your system at that point, and so that's kind of like topping off the tank. Next slide. So Chicago doesn't allow hydration packs. So anything with a reservoir that you carry on your backpack style, they don't let you take in. So don't try, because they will confiscate it, or they'll make you you have to bring it back to your hotel and come back without it. They do allow waste packs with I believe it's up to 8-ounce bottles. Check you want to check specifics, check the Chicago Marathon website, but you can bring hydration belts. So that's something you can have with you. It's something that if you need to have your own hydration on the course, obviously start out with it, and then have people along the course, if you have supporters there along the course, if you're going to not use the Gatorade Endurance that's on the course, have people at designated places that where to find them to pick up refills for you along the way. You're not going to be able to carry enough for yourself for the whole race based on what they allow you to bring in. So you can, if you have a mix, you can get water obviously inside. You can bring the powder or what have you unopened in there and make it inside there, but you won't be able to bring your even the hydration belt filled going in. You'll have to kind of fill it once you're inside the start, inside the starting area. Next slide. So I think this is true about any race, but I think the biggest mistake, I think we've all done it once or twice or multiple times, is the panic, go to first porta potty you see upon entering kind of this security area. There are porta potties as you get closer to the corrals, so I suggest you kind of bypass the panic lineup that happens when people enter, and look for one a little bit closer to your starting corral. Often you'll find a little bit better line. Make sure that you kind of factor in the 20-25 minutes that you might be in line, so you can get to your corral in time. Don't be like me, who found out at the last second that the line that I had my starting time wrong, and so make sure you're aware of all those kind of timing aspects that we'll cover in a moment, that you give yourself enough time to go through the porta potty line. Often it's the first thing you do once you get into the security area, but like I said, try and move away from the ones that are available or visible right when you enter. They tell you to go 2 hours early. Most of the time for races, I feel that's good planning. I feel like Chicago, especially if you're coming from, if you're staying close to the start, an hour and a half is actually really fine. Chicago is one of the logistically easier, if not the easiest, kind of mega marathon I've ever done, as far as getting into Chicago, getting to start, metro right to the start, just across the street or a block away, depending on which stop you go to. The start and finish from the same area. It just makes it so much easier, and it's just generally, in my experience, been very well run. So it's not like Boston or New York, where that you got to get there hours to take a bus to the starting area, and then you sit there for hours waiting for your wave to start. You can get there. I wouldn't go too much under an hour and a half, but you can get there. You can take it a little bit easier on race morning, as far as having to rush out at 4 a.m. to catch your bus to go somewhere. The metro runs pretty regularly. If you time it out right, you shouldn't have any problem. It's generally been pretty smooth sailing for me as far as my Chicago marathon race experience. And when you get there, kind of along the theme about the leading up to it, get off your feet, take it easy. Don't pace around nervously. Maybe get some strides as you get closer to your start time or when you need to get to your corral, but don't just focus on taking it easy, calm yourself. Just want to get yourself in a good place before race day. Just be prepared for getting done what you need to do, but try and kind of calm yourself down at the same time. Next slide. So kind of about the starting area, and we can go on to the next slide as well. They will tell you when you get your information, when you pick up your bib, kind of what gate is best for your corral and your wave. Any of them will get you into the area. It is best to stick to the one that they suggest, because that will be closest to kind of where your corral is. If you have, you're going to check a bag, just make sure you do that, early. Don't do that last second. I like to have check my bag at a race typically, and then I'll have a throwaway bag that has everything I want to have with me leading up to the start, and just the stuff that I'm planning on tossing or donating. So I think that's just a good way to go about it, so that you again kind of check that box, have that that bag at the ready for the bag drop area, and then go off and find a good spot to kind of chill out and relax and kind of prepare yourself mentally and physically for what you're about to do. Next slide. So kind of as a race overview, I think it's good to kind of see the course from this perspective, because if you hopefully have some friends or family or loved ones who are going to be there to cheer you on, it's a great race. When my wife came with me, or my then girlfriend came with me the first time around Chicago, I think she saw me, I think 4 times. And as you can see, if you hustle, there's so many places where it doubles up or it will pass by, relatively close to each other, a few blocks difference, that you can see someone multiple times, which is, like, as we all know, such a good experience when you see that person out there cheering you on. It's a huge pickup. And so it's a great course for that someone can see you multiple times, unlike a course like Boston, where you plan on them seeing you once. You can see someone 2, 3, or 4 times, maybe more if you can hustle. That to get someone to cheer you on at different spots on the course, where you need it the most. Next slide. So things to think about. If you haven't run one of these kind of what I describe as a mega marathon, you can be running with, somewhere north of 40,000 people at Chicago. It's a lot. It can be overwhelming. The Athletes Village area can be overwhelming. So kind of be prepared for that. That's why I think it's good to kind of like get situated, kind of make the place seem small to you. At least how I like to go about it. Find a nook for me to kind of go into and just relax and distract myself. You're going to be with people for the first several miles. It does space out, but it's, you're going to look ahead of you, you're going to see thousands of bobbing heads. You're going to look behind you, you're going to see thousands of bobbing heads. So just be prepared for that. Aid stations are going to be crowded. So you don't have to make a beeline for the first, water stop that you see. Usually it's on both sides of the road. So you don't have to zigzag to get what you need. And you don't have to do it right at the start. So like I like to keep a center lane, and then like towards the end of the water stop, I'll zip over and get the Gatorade endurance or the water, what I might want for that particular stop. So just try and be strategic about how you do it. Don't run further or harder than you have to already on race day. Don't try and weave kind of out through the people, especially in the beginning, or if you're running with a pace group. You don't want to, you just make sure you have space to run. Things will open up as you get further along. You will find space. You won't be jostling as much, but just kind of be prepared for that happening in the first couple miles. And again, something that everyone always complains about is like, I ran 26.8 miles. That course was too long. And like, no, the course was not too long. You were not you're not running the tangents. And that may not always be possible in a big race like this, because at least a lot of people are trying to do that too. But just be aware of taking a good line as you make your way through the course, not being a lemming and going around wide, following other people in front of you wide, like, kind of take a tighter corner when possible. In this case, you're going to follow the blue line, not the yellow brick road. You'll follow the blue line. And that will take you the most direct way to the finish. Next slide. So first and foremost, follow your plan. So follow your pacing you're hoping to do, follow your hydration plan, follow your nutrition plan. Do not deviate from that unless circumstance necessitate. But you're going in with a plan, execute that plan. You'll see water and lemon lime Gatorade endurance formula starting at mile 1.6. And then it's like roughly every like 1 to 2 miles after that. So if you're planning on using the hydration, the sports drink on marathon day, hopefully that's something you train with leading up to it. I personally typically train with at least train somewhat with the Gatorade endurance formula. At least I'm familiar with what's going to be on the course. A lot of the bigger races tend to have that. A lot of races just tend to have that on course as a hydration product. So it's a good thing to at least be used to, and almost without fail, it's going to be the lemon lime flavor. They use the Gatorade Endurance gels, which apparently have been discontinued. So I'm not sure why, if that was prior to them designated as what they're going to use on the course, but people have been talking about this in various chat rooms for months about not being able to get their hands on it. I definitely would recommend, if you haven't trained with it, and probably at this point most people have not due to the circumstances, carrying with you what your needs are going to be. Either having 3 or 4 gels tucked into your running shorts, not that big of a hindrance, or if you're going to be picking up stuff from people along the way, you can have people to hand you your gels when you need them, or soon before you're going to need them on the course. But this gives you an idea of what will be available, when and where, starting at mile 13.6 and mile 18.2, when they'll have those Gatorade gels available to you. They have a couple different versions, including a caffeinated and non-caffeinated versions, based on what your needs would be. But again, I don't recommend trying them on the fly on race day unless you're just purely desperate, because you just don't know how you're going to react to them. Next slide, please. So focus on goals, kind of exceeding your goals as your number one priority. Focus on the targets that you have set for yourself. Whether if you have a cap on your heart rate, for instance, make sure that you're kind of keeping track of that as you run throughout the race, and so that if you need to kind of dial things back a little bit, so your heart rate can get down to a more manageable level, then do so. But kind of through the filter of like just how you're feeling. If you're feeling good, your heart rate's maybe a little high, but just feeling like this, just feeling effortless, then that's how I personally like to go about kind of going by how I feel like my body is dealing with it. Like if I'm feeling good, I'm going to take into account the information I'm getting, the heart rate, what my pace is, but I can use that to calibrate what I'm doing. But I'm kind of go by how I'm feeling in that moment, as well as kind of tactically where I am in terms of along the race course. If you're hopefully feeling really good early on, and but if you're not, then because it's a little bit warmer, because you just maybe you've been sick leading up to race day, you may have to kind of recalibrate things to kind of the reality of kind of what you're dealing with on race morning. Stick to that plan. Again, like I said, if things don't go the way you planned, just be comfortable recalibrating things, slowing down a little bit, or maybe even speeding up a little bit if you're feeling really great. But just don't be wedded to a plan if the conditions don't dictate it. If it's particularly warm and you're planning on doing a really aggressive time, that may not work. You have to kind of recalibrate things, and ideally beforehand, but if it's necessary, on the fly, so that you can kind of maximize what you're doing on race day. Next slide. So focus on goals as so kind of as far as pacing, you want to go about with what the metric is, or metrics you're using to calibrate yourself on race day. If you need help with that, kind of figuring out what that is, QT2 has a great race pace calculator to use, but I've listed a couple other ones that are helpful. They have kind of for you to figure out kind of what you're able to do and what you need to do to hit a particular goal. Next slide. So Chicago, like many of the big marathons, has pace groups. It's a little bit confusing in that there can be overlap in the pace groups. For instance, as you can see, both the C and B groups have a 3:10 pace group. And so once things get going and it gets mixed up, each group will be based on its start time. Once the group passes the start line, will be dialed in. But you may be running with a group that is like, if you catch up to the B group, if you're starting the C corral, you have to be aware of that hey, you're actually ahead of pace there, and maybe you should dial it back a little bit. So just be aware of that overlap, but it is helpful to be running with a group, especially on a windy day. Gives you kind of shields you from the wind, lets you like kind of reduce that mental stress of like staying on pace. definitely something that I think it's a useful tool for it's, the first half of the race or more, like staying with that group. And then if you've actively assess kind of what you're capable of doing, if you're able to pick up the pace at that point, you kind of break away as you hit the mid to high teens, kind of run your own race and then start picking off runners from that point. But like use that to kind of save your strength both mentally and physically by running in that group is helpful. The thing to keep in mind though is that it's going to be a little bit congested, a little bit of jostling. So sometimes it's good to try and run on the periphery of that group. But to really benefit it from you kind of want to be inside it to the extent you're able to. Just be prepared for maybe a little bit of bumping here and there, especially in the beginning of the race. Next slide. So as far as weather, we'll all become amateur meteorologists leading up to race day. At this point, forecasting becomes more and more accurate, obviously, the closer you get to it. So I wouldn't overthink what you might be seeing now, 10 days out or thereabouts. But kind of typically what you're dealing with is, between 57 degrees Fahrenheit with a high of 66, the average, so low of 48. So hopefully we're somewhere in that range. That is where typically people, the maximum range, the optimal range for most marathon runners between 44 and 59. So kind of that fits within that range, and hopefully the weather that day will kind of follow suit. However, most non-elite marathoners kind of designated by people who finish between 3:30 and 5 hours. Like the best temperature is 44 as far as kind of the most optimal temperature, but there's a wider range that you still can perform at. So don't be, if we have temperatures in the mid to high 50s, don't overthink it. Just control what you can control. Focus on that hydration before and during the race. Next slide. So one of the things that happens when you get over that 59 degrees is that it's not even just physiological, but your body, like the perceived effort for running a given pace increases. And so, and I think that's your body's way of kind of limiting you to kind of rein you in. So just be aware of that, that if you stay on top of it, the things you can control, your fueling and your hydration, you can still do well outside of that range. But, you just be kind of keep on getting that mental feedback as far as like what you're doing, how you're doing at a given point, and adjust if necessary. How much the temperature increases affects how fast you are, regardless of gender. For women, the optimal temperature range tends to be the core end of that spectrum as far as range for optimal performance for marathoners, but they're less affected by temperature on average than men. So something to think about too is dew point. We have a calculator, a QT2, that you should check out. So basically, what happens is when the air becomes so saturated at a given has a kind of a maximum saturation point, that if moisture in the air, and then what happens is that your body is still trying to cool itself by sweating, but that sweating doesn't dissipate, and it just collects on your body, and so your body kind of goes through this like cycle of trying to cool itself, but it can't. That's why you have to kind of, that's how kind of dew point is a more accurate idea of how you need to kind of regulate your pace or adjust your pacing before race day based on that kind of how that's going to impact your ability to cool yourself off as you're racing. Next slide. So let's talk about the factors that impact pacing. Course elevation. Obviously on this course, it's not a significant factor. There's a little bit of up as you kind of approach the finish that it'll seem like, you're summiting Mount Everest, but it's really not that bad. Other than that, it's pretty darn flat. You just have to kind of be aware on the bridges. Your footing on the bridges, even if the bridges aren't like, it's not like New York with the bridges. They're not these big arced spans that you're making. It's relatively short, small bridges that are crossing over the Chicago River. Again, kind of focus on the temperature and adjusting your plan if necessary before race day. running the tangents, knowing, planning out your stops during the race, knowing when you're going to get, if you can take the gels on the course, knowing that when they're available, knowing, like if you're going to be taking you're taking some hydration at a water stop, making sure that you're kind of smart about how you're kind of get yourself over to there. Don't wildly zig out of where you're at to try and lunge it at a cup of water. Make sure that you're kind of being smart about it and minimizing effort at every stage along the way. Don't worry about necessarily passing people, even if we all are at some levels competitive. But maybe at the end that might change as you get further along. If things just as far as people break up a little bit more where you're at, kind of surging to catch up to someone and then recovering is a great technique to use. But ultimately, the reality is, unless you're one of the select few who's really challenging for the title on race day, we're all racing against ourselves, the elements, and the course. And so, ultimately, that is you are your biggest adversary on race day, and how you react to kind of how your body is dealing with the challenges on race day will dictate how you're going to do on as far as your result. Next slide. So gear check opens at 5:30, I believe. We'll have access to shot area before then. But just times to keep in mind. Even if you're an experienced marathoner, you can make mistakes as far as like when your wave is going to start. So just like keep an eye on your clock. Just know the times that are relevant to you, so that you're not rushed and you're not, let's say, racing to your starting corral like I did last year. You want to avoid those type of mistakes. And so just having the times that are relevant to you in mind are important. If you have that, listed on your phone or on a piece of paper, just a good things to remind yourself, so you don't get kind of caught up as you're kind of trying to get yourself prepared mentally, that you don't lose track of like when you're supposed to be somewhere. Next slide. So the race starts in Grant Park, which is beautiful, and I definitely encourage you to linger there afterwards. Take some like beautiful pictures in front of the fountain there. It's a lovely space, right next to Millennium Park, which is super cool too. You're gonna, in the beginning of the race, you're gonna experience like the crowd is gonna be great. You're gonna be like completely jazzed up for things. Just try and focus those first few miles on locking down your pace as you run through kind of the kind of city center of Chicago. Again, it's going to be crowded. As long as you prepare yourself for that, you find a good lane to run in, you're going to be fine. Again, don't waste your energy trying to weave around people, especially early on. It's like you see people do it all the time, and it's just a waste of energy, and it's really very little of any gain at all. Next slide. So from miles to 10, again, hopefully at that point you've like zeroed in on your pace. You've kind of locked that in, and you're just going. Whether you're, if you're running with a pace group, someone's zeroing in for you, but it's always the err on the side of restraint and kind of reining yourself in, kind of keeping an eye on your watch, making sure your pace isn't ticking up, or down, depending on how you want to refer to it. You don't want to be speeding up just because you're just not focused. You really want to be in the moment. Keep on getting that kind of biofeedback and checking the numbers on your watch and making sure that everything, is where it should be at that given pace that you've planned for on race day. It's really some beautiful areas you run through, and so just take it all in. It's like one of the great things about running through like these big city marathons is you own the streets of Chicago that day, so like enjoy it. And then something to think about is especially the first 4 or 5 miles, but really for the whole downtown sections that you're on the courses in, your watch might be a little bit off or a lot off. One of the things that people will do is like manually kind of auto do the lapping for the mile splits, as opposed to using the auto lap feature. Definitely, if you are someone who really needs to have that specificity, and if it's a little bit off, it's going to throw you off, I definitely recommend kind of using manually to hitting your lap splits. And if you're a little bit off, on one, you kind of get it, catch it on the next one. It'll keep your data more accurate, and for your own peace of mind, I think it would be worth doing. Next slide. So as for 11 to 17, you're going through Ellatown in the River North area. That's where you're going to hit the first gel stop. Again, it's something that you don't want to necessarily partake in unless you've used that in your training. You want to, as you go through kind of Greektown and Little Italy, you get some like really cool, like these are kind of the neighborhood flair that you get from running these bigger races. It's super cool to experience. Definitely take it all in. Every kind of section of the city has its own culture and appeal, and it's fun. It's fun to experience. So as you kind of approach mile 18, there'll be that second gel stop. Again, if you haven't used them before, then now it's not the time. Next slide. So as you go through the Pilsen neighborhood, you get some really great support there. You also hit the start of the Chiquita Banana aid stations. There's a number, I think it's like 5 in a row of the aid stations that will have Chiquita Banana. If you need a if you need a little fix there at that point, if you're dealing with get a little bit of potassium burst that can help you with it. If you're dealing with any kind of cramping, there's something available to you there. This is a time, as we all know, in a race, you really just have to focus, dial it in. Once you get past the Pilsen neighborhood, it gets a little bit, you kind of go through a kind of more industrial area, which is not as appealing, and that's when you're also kind of the most exposed as far if the sun does break out. It kind of lasts several miles before you kind of get within a mile or two of the finish. Next slide. So the crowds do pick up within like a couple miles out of the finish. It's like the reason why you run these races is because you are the star when you finish them, and you will have that moment at Chicago. You have people lined several rows deep on either side. It's just like this massive finish sign that kind of goes over this 2 lanes of like this basically a highway that you're running through. And you're finishing kind of in the center of the city. It's stunning. You're going to be like, as hard as the race that they have been up to that point, it is a worthy finish as much as any other race there is in the world. And so I hope you will enjoy it. Take advantage of that adrenaline you get as you kind of approach that finish. You can pick up those last seconds to hit that, hopefully that BQ or PR that you might have be aiming for on race day. Take it all in. Something to think about too is if you're having any issues at mile 21.2, they have a biofreeze set up there that your volunteers will kind of lather your knees, so whatever area might be, whatever body part might be bothering you at that point, to kind of help get you through the finish. If it's something, it's something you haven't used before, now might not be the time to do it. But if you need something just to help you kind of push through the last bit of discomfort to get you to the finish line, it is available to you. Next slide. So there you see it. You got the finish line in front of you. Just remember that the time in front of you is going to be the time from the first wave, so it's not going to be your finish time. Obviously your time is going to be based on the time that you cross the start and cross the finish, the net time. Your race day pictures that have the clock in there might not be your time, but you'll definitely get some good shots of yourself as you speed down that last few hundred yards. Hopefully with people cheering you on, loved ones and family cheering you on, and then just enjoy that moment. Next slide. So as far as spectators, they have a very good app. Definitely you should have your friends, family put your number into the app and use that to monitor you. Typically it's like, I believe it's like every 5 kilometers it will give an updated ping, and then between that will kind of give, based on your pacing, approximate location. So allows people to kind of decide whether they should make it to the next spot to try and catch you along the race course. Again, as I said in the beginning, it kind of allows for that. The overlap allows for people to see you multiple times, which is awesome. Be patient at the finish. It's a lot of people. So just like, just gotta be patient, then you'll get back to your family and friends in due time, but just be patient with everyone else, the volunteers, as you kind of make your way to exit. And then, remember to make a plan beforehand where you're going to meet your friends and family, so you're not trying to, figure that out on the fly on race day after you finish, when you're going to be dealing with a lot of other things besides trying to remember where you're supposed to meet your friends. Next slide. So Chicago is a great city. So many great things to do and see. I generally recommend, if you can wait till afterwards, hopefully you're spending a couple days afterwards, and if you feel up to it, there's some great things that you do in the city. I've taken an architectural boat tour that goes on the Chicago River. It's just a great way. Chicago is just a stunning city as far as architecture is concerned. Definitely worth the time to, if you have the time, definitely worth the expense to go on one of these tours and take it in. Beautiful. Amazing museums too. It's the, whether it be Chicago Institute of Art, Field Museum, or the Museum of Science and Industry, just super cool things for all age groups. If you're there with your kids, there's things that will appeal to them too. So just things to think about if you're making more of a trip of it. There's some great things to take advantage of. I definitely recommend it, ideally after the race. Next slide, please. So when you go to any place, there's kind of must-try foods. For me, Chicago, maybe because I'm a tourist, I'm synonymous with deep dish pizza. That for me is one of my go-to pre-race Chicago foods. That I've used successfully, but it's definitely something to partake in at some point during your stay. If you haven't tried it before, maybe afterwards. But definitely something worth checking out. And there's some good locations to do it. I've listed, but there are other places in the city that are worth your patronage. Italian beef sandwiches are also a very popular Chicago food choice, so something to think about too. If you want to try things that are quintessential to Chicago hits, that's another thing that you should try. Next slide. Garrett popcorn, and this was relatively new to me, but there's a store that's like multiple locations that makes kind of this salty sweet popcorn that is very, very popular. So definitely something to pick up when you're there and try out. Again, after the race, but something fun to try out. And then for you and your kids, the original rainbow cone is like another kind of Chicago dessert that is worth trying when you're there. It's something that will make everyone happy. To partake in. Next slide. So if you have any questions, if you put them in chat, we can get back to you on that right now. And if not, if something comes up, definitely reach out to me, either in the comments. I'll be monitoring them once this is put on YouTube, but also you can email me directly. I'm happy to respond to any questions. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch or participate in this video.
Okay, thank you very much, Jon, for very informed course preview today. If anyone does have any questions, you are welcome to put them in the chat box now. Or as Jon mentioned, this video is up on YouTube, and you can put in any comments at that point or reach out to Jon directly. All right, I think we'll wrap it up then. Jon, thank you very much, and good luck to you on race day.
Thanks, I appreciate that.